The phone rang at 2:17 in the morning. I almost didn't answer it. My husband Mark was sleeping beside me, and the sound of the phone vibrating across the nightstand made me reach for it before it woke him. The number was my mother's. I stared at the screen. My mother never called that late. I answered, "Mom?" There was silence. Then I heard her crying. Not the quiet kind of crying. She was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "Emily," my heart immediately started racing. "What happened?" "It's your father." I sat upright. "What happened to Dad?" "He's gone." For a few seconds, I couldn't understand what she meant. Then the words hit me. My father was dead. I don't remember getting out of bed. I don't remember putting on my shoes. I only remember Mark sitting up behind me and asking, "What's wrong?" I looked at him. My dad died. He immediately got out of bed. He hugged me. And for a moment, I thought I was surrounded by people who loved me. My husband, my mother, my family. I had no idea that within 72 hours, I would discover that the people standing closest to me were the same people planning to take everything I had. My father, Richard Bennett, had been my hero. He built Bennett Construction from nothing. When I was little, I used to sit in his office and watch him draw building plans on yellow legal pads. He would put his pencil down, look at me and say, "One day, sweetheart, you'll understand that the strongest buildings aren't the ones with the prettiest walls. They're the ones with the strongest foundations." I never realized he was talking about more than buildings. My younger sister, Sarah, was the opposite of me. She was beautiful, outgoing, confident, and always knew how to get what she wanted. Growing up, Sarah could cry for 5 minutes and somehow convince Dad to buy her whatever she wanted. I never complained. I was the responsible daughter. The one who studied. The one who stayed home. The one who helped Dad with paperwork. Sarah always said I was boring. "You're Dad's little assistant," she'd tease. I would laugh. I didn't mind. Because Dad trusted me. And trust was worth more to me than money. At least that's what I believed. After my father's funeral, everyone gathered at my parents' house. My mother sat in the living room surrounded by relatives. Sarah stood beside her. And Mark was there too. My husband held my hand. At least he pretended to. That afternoon, Dad's attorney arrived. His name was Thomas Reynolds. He had represented my father for more than 20 years. He carried a black leather folder. My mother immediately looked nervous. Sarah crossed her arms. Mark sat beside me. Thomas looked around the room. "I know this is difficult," he said. "But Mr. Bennett left very specific instructions." My mother wiped her eyes. "Can we do this another day?" Thomas shook his head. "Richard specifically requested that the will be read within 72 hours. I looked at my mother. Something about her expression felt wrong. Then Thomas opened the folder. He began reading. "My wife, Margaret Bennett. My mother inherited the family home. Sarah received a substantial cash inheritance. My younger brother received several investments." Then Thomas stopped. He looked directly at me. "And to my daughter, Emily." Sarah suddenly sat up. Thomas continued. "I leave controlling ownership of Bennett Construction, including all voting shares and the commercial properties held by the company." The room went completely silent. I couldn't breathe. I looked at Thomas. "I'm sorry, what?" My mother stared at me. Sarah's face turned white. Mark didn't move. Thomas continued. "I leave my daughter Emily the responsibility of serving as chairwoman of Bennett Construction." I felt dizzy. My father had left me the company. Not Sarah, not my mother. Me. I looked at Sarah. She wasn't crying anymore. She was staring at me with something I had never seen in her eyes before. Hatred. Then she stood up. "You knew." I shook my head. "Knew what?" "You knew Dad was going to give you everything." "I didn't." "You're lying." "Sarah, you've always been his favorite." She stormed out of the room. I sat there frozen. I thought the worst part was losing my father. I was wrong. The worst part was discovering that his death had just turned my family into enemies. And I had no idea that Sarah wasn't the only person who had been waiting for Dad to die. My husband had been waiting too. That night, Mark and I stayed at my parents' house. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the back porch staring at the swimming pool, where my father had taught me to swim. Mark came outside. He sat beside me. "Are you okay?" "No." He put his arm around me. "You don't have to worry about the company." I looked at him. "I'm not worried about the company." "Then what?" "My sister." He sighed. "Sarah is upset." Give her time. I nodded. Mark kissed my forehead. Your dad knew what he was doing. I looked at him. What do you mean? He obviously trusted you. I smiled sadly. I wish he were here. He'd be proud of you. I leaned against his shoulder. For the first time that day, I felt safe. But while I was crying against my husband's chest, Mark was hiding something from me. Something I wouldn't discover for another 3 weeks. The next morning, Sarah apologized. She walked into the kitchen while I was making coffee. I'm sorry. I turned around. For what? For what I said yesterday. I smiled. You're grieving. She hugged me. I hugged her back. Then she whispered, I'm happy for you. Those words should have comforted me. Instead, I felt something strange. I didn't know why, but I did. Maybe because Sarah had never been good at pretending. Still, I ignored my instincts. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was allowing Sarah to become involved with the company. A week after the funeral, she asked me to meet her for lunch. I want to help. I nearly laughed. With what? The company? Sarah, you've never worked in construction. I know. She smiled. But I understand people. I wasn't sure what she meant. Then she leaned closer. Dad's business has hundreds of employees. You don't know all of them. I can learn. You shouldn't have to. She reached across the table. Let me help you. I agreed. Looking back, I realized she wasn't offering to help me. She was trying to get close enough to take control. Within a month, Sarah had become my unofficial advisor. She introduced me to executives. She attended meetings. She started giving opinions. And Mark encouraged it. You need someone you trust, he told me. I said, I trust you. He smiled. That's why I'm telling you to trust Sarah. I didn't know it then. But Mark and Sarah had already started having private conversations. And they weren't about helping me. 3 months after my father's death, something strange happened. I received an email from the company's accounting department. A payment of $85,000 had been made to a consulting company. The company was called S&B Strategic Solutions. I didn't recognize it. I called the CFO. Who authorized this? He hesitated. Mrs. Bennett, your sister approved it. I frowned. Sarah? Yes. Why? She said it was related to restructuring. I immediately called Sarah. What is S&B Strategic Solutions? She laughed. Oh, that. What does that mean? It's a consulting company. I know that. So what's the problem? Why did you approve an $85,000 payment? Emily, you're overwhelmed. I didn't answer. She continued. Dad used outside consultants all the time. I know. Then why are you questioning me? Because something felt wrong. But I couldn't explain it. I told her to send me the contract. She agreed. 2 days later, I received it. The contract looked legitimate. But there was one detail that bothered me. The company address was a private mailbox. I called Thomas Reynolds. He told me he'd investigate. 3 days later, he called. Emily, I think you should come to my office. When I arrived, he placed a document in front of me. Who owns S&B Strategic Solutions? I don't know. You should? I looked at him. Why? Because the company is registered to your sister. My stomach dropped. What? Thomas nodded. Sarah Bennett owns 100%. I stared at the document. Why would she do that? That is what we need to find out. I drove home that evening. Mark was in the kitchen. Where were you? With Thomas. He looked nervous. What did he say? I studied his face. He found something about Sarah. Mark's expression changed. What? I told him. He was quiet. Then he said, You should be careful. With Sarah? With everyone. I smiled. Why? Money changes people. I didn't answer. Because suddenly I wondered whether money had already changed him. That night, Mark fell asleep on the couch. His phone was beside him. It buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. I wasn't trying to look. I swear I wasn't. But the screen lit up, and I saw a message. Sarah, are you sure she doesn't know? My heart stopped. I picked up the phone. There was another message. Mark, she trusts me. She won't suspect anything. I couldn't breathe. I looked at my husband sleeping 6 feet away. Then another message appeared. Sarah, we have to be patient. I opened the conversation. There were hundreds of messages. Weeks of them. Months. They had been talking behind my back. About me. About the company. About my father's will. About the house. About the inheritance. I scrolled. Then I found something that made my hands shake. Mark, once she signs the transfer, everything changes. Sarah, and the divorce? Mark, I'll handle that. I dropped the phone. Mark woke up. What happened? I looked at him. He sat up. Emily? I couldn't speak. He saw his phone in my hand. His face changed. He knew. I whispered. How long? He didn't answer. How long have you and my sister been having an affair? Emily, how long? He stood. It wasn't supposed to happen. I laughed. You don't accidentally have hundreds of secret conversations. He walked toward me. Listen to me. No. Emily, please. You slept with my sister? He looked down. That was the answer. I stepped backward. You both planned this? He remained silent. I pointed toward the door. Get out. Emily, get out! He grabbed his jacket. Before leaving, he turned around. You don't understand what you're doing. I stared at him. No, he said quietly. You're going to regret this. I watched him walk away, and something inside me changed. I stopped crying. I stopped shaking. I opened the message again. There were hundreds of them. And suddenly I understood. They didn't just want my marriage. They wanted my company. The next morning I called Thomas. I need everything. Everything? Every document related to my father's estate. He was silent. Emily, is something wrong? My husband and my sister are working together. He immediately understood. Come to my office. When I arrived, Thomas locked the door. I showed him the messages. He read them carefully. Then he looked at me. Your father suspected this? I froze. What? Thomas opened a drawer. He removed another envelope. This was given to me 6 months before your father died. I stared at it. My father gave you this? Yes. Why? He told me not to open it unless you became involved in a dispute over the company. My hands trembled. I opened it. Inside was a letter. My father's handwriting. Emily, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I stopped. Tears filled my eyes. Thomas waited. I continued reading. I know you don't like confrontation. That's one of the things I love most about you. But there may come a time when kindness becomes a weakness others can exploit. My throat tightened. Your sister has been asking questions about the company. Your husband has also shown unusual interest in certain assets. I hope I'm wrong. I looked at Thomas. My father knew. Maybe he had known everything. I continued. If they ever try to convince you that the company belongs to them, remember this. I didn't leave you the company because you're my favorite. I left it to you because you're the only person I trust to protect what I built. I started crying. Then I read the final paragraph. And Emily, there is one more thing you don't know. I froze. The company owns the building where you and Mark live. I looked up. What? Thomas nodded. Your father purchased it years ago? I stared at him. The house wasn't technically ours. It belonged to Bennett Holdings. Then I understood why Mark had been so interested in the property documents. He hadn't just wanted a divorce. He wanted control of the company because control meant control of our home, the commercial properties and millions in assets. Thomas handed me another document. There's more. It showed a proposed transfer. Mark and Sarah had been preparing to move company assets into a new holding company. If they succeeded, millions could disappear. I looked at Thomas. What do I do? He smiled. Now we let them make their mistake. I went home that night. Mark was waiting. He looked exhausted. Emily, can we talk? I nodded. I sat across from him. What do you want? He sighed. I want to fix this. I almost laughed. But I didn't. Instead, I said, maybe we can. He looked surprised. You mean it? I don't know. He reached for my hand. I let him. Then he said, Sarah isn't what you think. I looked into his eyes. What do you mean? She made mistakes. I nodded. I'm sure she did. He squeezed my hand. You're my wife. Yes. I don't want to lose you. I almost said, then why did you betray me? Instead, I asked, what happens to the company if we divorce? His eyes moved slightly. That tiny movement told me everything. I don't know. I smiled. I'll talk to the lawyers. He nodded. That night, I told Mark I needed time. He agreed. The next morning, I called Sarah. Can we talk? She sounded nervous. Of course. I met her at a coffee shop. I looked at her. I know about you and Mark. She froze. I saw the messages. She began crying. Emily, I raised my hand. I don't want excuses. She wiped her face. I love him. I smiled sadly. Then you can have him. She looked shocked. What? You can have my husband. Her expression changed. Really? I nodded. But there's one condition. What? You stay away from the company. She hesitated. Then she smiled. I promise. I knew she was lying. And she knew I knew. But neither of us said it. 3 weeks later, Mark asked me to sign some papers. What's this? Just routine company documents. I looked at them. They were actually transfer documents. He wanted me to authorize a new holding company. I pretended to read them. Then I signed. Mark smiled. Thank you. I smiled back. You're welcome. What Mark didn't know was that Thomas had prepared a special legal structure. The documents I signed did not transfer ownership. They transferred responsibility for an investigation. Every person involved would now be required to disclose financial records. Every payment. Every account. Every communication. And because Mark had signed as a witness, he had just put himself directly inside the investigation. Sarah did the same thing 2 days later. She signed a related document. Thomas called me. They took the bait. I closed my eyes. Now what? Now we wait. I hated waiting. But I knew my father had taught me patience for a reason. 2 months later, my mother invited everyone to dinner. She didn't know everything. Or at least I didn't think she did. When I arrived, Sarah was already there. Mark was sitting beside her. My mother looked uncomfortable. She said, I want us to be a family again. I looked around the table. My husband, my sister, my mother, the people who had betrayed me. I sat down. Dinner was quiet. Then Sarah said, Emily, we need to talk about the company. I looked at her. Why? Because Dad wanted the family to benefit. I smiled. He wanted the company protected. He wanted all of us taken care of. You already received your inheritance. She frowned. That's not fair. I looked at Mark. What do you think? He said, maybe there should be a compromise. I laughed. Of course. My mother looked at me. Emily, your sister is your family. So am I. She went silent. Then Sarah said something that changed everything. Dad would be ashamed of you. I stared at her. What? You're destroying the family over money. I slowly stood. No. I looked directly at her. I'm protecting the family from people who are willing to destroy it for money. She stood too. You think you're better than me? No. I paused. I think Dad knew you better than I did. Her face turned pale. Mark looked nervous. I placed a folder on the table. Nobody touched it. Open it. Sarah shook her head. What's inside? Everything. Sarah opened the folder. Inside were bank records, contracts, emails, company transactions, and printed copies of the messages between her and Mark. My mother picked one up. She read it. Then another. Her face changed. She looked at Sarah. Is this true? Sarah started crying. Mom, is this true? She couldn't answer. My mother looked at Mark. You betrayed my daughter? Mark lowered his head. My mother stood. I thought you loved her. Mark whispered. I made mistakes. I looked at him. Mistakes don't take 6 months. Silence. Then I said, You both tried to steal from Bennett Construction. Sarah shouted. We weren't stealing. You created fake consulting contracts. We were going to repay it. You transferred company money. It was temporary. You planned to move company properties. Sarah stopped. My mother looked horrified. Then Thomas walked into the room. Everyone turned. He placed a stack of documents on the table. I'm afraid we're past the point of explanations. Mark looked at him. Who are you? My mother answered. Richard's attorney. Thomas looked at Mark. You've been served. Mark's face went white. Sarah began crying. And then something happened I never expected. My mother slapped Sarah. Not hard, but enough to make the room silent. You destroyed your sister's marriage. Sarah whispered. I didn't mean to. My mother shook her head. You didn't just destroy her marriage. She looked at the documents. You tried to destroy your father's company. Sarah collapsed into the chair. I thought everything was over. I was wrong. That same evening, Thomas called me. There is one more problem. What? We found another account. Whose? He hesitated. Your mother's. I froze. My mother's? Yes. He sent me the records. There were deposits from Sarah, thousands of dollars. Then payments from Mark. Then transfers from a company I didn't recognize. I stared at the screen. How long? Almost a year. I couldn't believe it. My mother had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. I drove to her house. She was sitting alone in the kitchen. I placed the records on the table. She started crying. I can explain. I sat down. Please do. She looked at me. Your sister came to me. When? Months before your father died. What did she want? She wanted me to convince your father to change the will. I closed my eyes. And you agreed? I was afraid. Of what? She told me if you inherited the company, everything would fall apart. I stared at her. And you believed her? I didn't know what to believe. What about the money? She began crying. She said it was for legal expenses. I shook my head. You knew. I suspected. I stood. You watched them betray me. My mother whispered, I'm sorry. I walked toward the door. Then she said, Your father knew. I stopped. What? He knew I was helping Sarah. I turned around. My mother was crying. He knew? She nodded. He confronted me 2 weeks before he died. I felt my chest tighten. What did he say? She whispered. He told me, one day Emily will understand who stood beside her when it mattered. I couldn't speak. My father had known. And somehow, even after he was gone, he was still protecting me. The legal case lasted nearly a year. Mark eventually admitted to financial misconduct. Sarah claimed she had been manipulated. But the evidence was overwhelming. The company recovered most of the money. Mark lost his position. Sarah was required to repay a significant amount and faced criminal charges related to the fraudulent transactions. I never wanted revenge. I wanted the truth. There is a difference. During one hearing, Mark asked to speak to me. I agreed. We sat in a small conference room. He looked older, tired, broken. I ruined everything, he said. I didn't answer. I thought your father would eventually give you control anyway. I stared at him. So you wanted to get there first. He looked down. I was afraid. Of what? That I'd always be your husband's shadow. I shook my head. You were never my shadow. He looked at me. You were my partner. Tears filled his eyes. I know. No. I stood. You don't know. I walked toward the door. You knew exactly what you were doing. He whispered, I loved you. I turned around. Then you should have protected me. He had no answer. I left. A year after my father's death, Bennett Construction held its annual meeting. I stood on a stage in front of hundreds of employees. For the first time, I understood what my father had meant when he talked about foundations. A company isn't built from money. It's built from people. People who show up. People who work. People who trust each other. I looked at the audience. Some of you knew my father for 30 years. People smiled. He taught me something I've never forgotten. I paused. He said the strongest buildings aren't the ones with the prettiest walls. They're the ones with the strongest foundations. I looked around, and I think families are the same. The room became quiet. A family can look perfect from the outside and still be collapsing from within. I took a breath. But when the foundation is strong, you can rebuild. The employees applauded. After the meeting, I walked outside. There was a package waiting for me. It was from my father's attorney. Inside was his old yellow legal pad. The same kind he used when I was a child. On the first page, he had written something. For Emily. I turned the page. There was a note. If you're reading this, you're probably wondering why I trusted you with everything. The answer is simple. Because you never asked me for anything. I started crying. Then I read the final sentence. Never confuse being kind with being weak. Your kindness is your strength. Just make sure you give it to people who deserve it. I held the paper against my chest. And for the first time since his death, I felt like my father was standing beside me. 6 months later, my mother came to my office. She looked different. Older. Smaller. She sat across from me. Can we talk? I nodded. She placed a photograph on the desk. It was an old picture of me and Sarah as children. We were sitting beside Dad. I smiled. I remember this. Your father took it. She looked at the photograph. He always said you two were his greatest accomplishment. I looked at her. I miss him. So do I. There was a long silence. Then she said, I know you may never forgive me. I didn't answer. I should have protected you. Yes. She started crying. I was afraid of losing Sarah. I said quietly, and you almost lost me. She nodded. I know. I picked up the photograph. I don't hate you. She looked at me. But I can't pretend nothing happened. I understand. She stood. Before leaving, she said, Your father was right. About what? You were always the strong one. I smiled sadly. No, Mom. She looked at me. I was just the one who finally learned when to stop being weak. 2 years after my divorce, I received an invitation. Sarah was getting married. I stared at the envelope for a long time. I almost threw it away. Then I opened it. The groom wasn't Mark. Apparently, Sarah had moved on. I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was the note attached to the invitation. I don't expect you to come, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I didn't attend. Not because I hated her. Because sometimes healing requires distance. And I had finally learned something important. You can forgive someone without giving them access to your life. I wished her well. Then I put the invitation in a drawer and moved on. Today, when people ask me what happened to my family, I usually give them the short version. My father died. My husband cheated. My sister betrayed me. They tried to take control of the company. They failed. But that's not really the story. The real story is what happened inside me. Before my father died, I believed keeping peace was the same thing as being a good person. I thought if I stayed quiet, forgave everyone, and avoided confrontation, my family would remain together. I was wrong. Sometimes keeping the peace means allowing dishonest people to hurt you. Sometimes saying enough is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And sometimes the people you lose are the very people who were preventing you from becoming who you were meant to be. I didn't become stronger because my father left me a company. I became stronger because I finally understood why he trusted me with it. Not because I was smarter. Not because I was richer. Not because I was his favorite. Because I had a foundation, and when everything around me collapsed, that foundation held. Every year on my father's birthday, I visit his grave. I bring flowers, and I bring a cup of coffee. He always loved coffee. This year, I sat beside his grave and talked to him. I finally understand. The wind moved through the trees. I thought you left me the company because you wanted me to become successful. I smiled. But that's not why. I looked at his name carved into the stone. You wanted me to learn that I could survive losing everyone who wasn't really mine. I wiped away a tear. Dad, I lost my husband. I paused. I lost my sister. Another pause. I almost lost Mom. Then I smiled. But I found myself. I placed the coffee beside the flowers. And I remembered something he once told me when I was 10 years old. I had asked him what happens when a building collapses. He said, You don't cry over the walls. I asked, Why? He smiled. Because now you get to see whether the foundation survived. I looked at his grave and finally understood. The walls of my life had collapsed. My marriage, my family, my trust. Everything I thought I knew had fallen apart. But my foundation survived. And that's why I was still standing. My name is Emily Bennett. And this is the story of how my husband and my sister tried to take everything from me, only to teach me that the one thing they could never take was myself.